now, from the running vlog capital of the world, in the middle of the world's shittiest rush hour traffic, it's why the Dearmoon Project should not pick Mclionhead for its free ride around the moon. Now, obviously, the main reason is because, look at this. No human would have hair like this. That's because Mclionhead is a lion. And you probably don't want lions in your spaceship with all those multi-millionaire YouTube stars. Think of the impact on Patreon's valuation if they all got eaten. Anyway, and then of course, Mclionhead has maybe 1 or 2 subscribers who still tune in. There were a few subscribers 20 or 15 years ago, but you know, eventually everybody finishes high school, moves on to bigger and better things, bigger and better YouTube channels. I think the first Mclionhead subscribers are now on to their second home and third marriage. Had a bunch of kids by now. Can't even spell YouTube anymore. Is the 1 minute up yet? Weren't we supposed to make a 1 minute video explaining why we weren't supposed to be picked if we weren't one of the ones who got picked for phase 3? And then, what would a lion do in space anyway? You can't really run anywhere inside a starship. And there wouldn't really be enough gravity to make the hills worth the effort. Well, if you don't already know, the phase 3 for the Dearmoon contest was awarded last week. And everybody who made it was asked to make a 1 minute video explaining why they should go. So, it's not because the YouTube stars are all tooting their horns or egotistical. It's just that's what they have to do to win the contest. So there are like tens of thousands of videos now from all the very top YouTube stars. And I was thinking, well, Inspiration 4 was already awarded, and they went to pretty obscure people who didn't have all the advantages. And that was funded by a startup founder. And in order to be a startup founder, you sort of have to want to make the world a better place and be altruistic and you want to make it a social justice mission, at least until you get your buyout offers and make your $1 trillion and retire. But until then, it has to sound altruistic. Now, Usaka, I think, is going to be almost the opposite of Inspiration 4. He was kind of a joker, at least as far as we know. He's kind of a joker online. Maybe not as far spaced out as Elon, but I don't think he's going to be shooting for the altruistic crew that Inspiration 4 went for. It's going to be very much whoever is the most over-the-top, outrageous YouTube star of our time. So, right away, obviously, the everyday guy is in. And we know that because Elon wore Everyday Guy's shirt in the Dearmoon promotional video. So it's kind of like the astronaut corps visiting Starbase repeatedly for press shots. NASA pretty much picked SpaceX for HLS months ago. So Everyday Guy is going. You better dry clean his spacesuit for that. As far as who the other top YouTube stars are, I think Usaka's going to go for wow factor. He's going to be looking for, if Casey Neistat was applying, he would be in. But he isn't applying. He seems to be in that phase where he wants to be a startup founder and he wants to convey that image. He already sold a startup, so. But some of these other stars, a lot of the internet likes Mr. Beast. And of course, I don't know who else is applying. It seemed like a lot of the musicians would have gotten picked if they applied. A lot of the famous musicians, like that one famous violinist who is in all the NASA videos, and I don't think anyone remembers because she hit 30. She might have hit 30 by now. The problem with GooTube is your career is over by age 30, especially if you're a woman. But certainly for a lot of the male GooTube stars, you gotta get your fortune in before age 30. So it's very much not going to be an inspiration for humanitarian effort. It's going to be a star power, shock and awe. It's going to be a lot of rich white guys. They might have a black woman in there just for social justice, but no other reason. And everybody's going to know it and not say anything. But they're not going to have Louis Rossman. That ain't going to happen. And there's no way a Mclionhead video explaining why Mclionhead shouldn't be on board could compete with a Louis Rossman video explaining why he shouldn't be on board. He would outdo all the Mclionheads being eligible. But that's what happens when you rock the boat nowadays. So today we're testing out new modification to the vlogging microphone and vlogging with the robotic camera. The vlog is decidedly sporadic because with the increased temperatures, this is our hottest spring in recorded history. It's exposing problems with robotics that we don't have in cooler temperatures. Fortunately, it's not as hot as it would be if Trump was still around, right? Even though it's 90 degrees, it would have been 120 if Trump was still president. Because Biden is the savior. The dude Biden's, as they say. Speaking of Americans, let's talk about a main reason for this vlog. Because the Dear Moon award wasn't really the idea. Well, this microphone was upgraded from what it used to be years ago because there was a guy named Goddard Tuck, or Tucker God, or whatever his name is, and he had this motorcycle microphone that was better than anything any lion could imagine. So we lions said we need to have a microphone that good. The problem is the Goddard Tuck microphone is $200. So instead, we just recycled a microphone from an old Zoom handy recorder. They have really good microphones for electric condensers. And it really does sound a lot better, although it might not be Tucker Gott equivalent. There's also a lot more wind noise with this microphone because it's a bigger capsule. There's less room for foam, so it's got a standard windscreen instead of the homemade foam. Standard windscreen is pretty awful. But anyway, a lot of the other running vlogs, they've stepped up their game. So, through the magic of Patreon, they just hire camera operators to run with the camera. And they have much nicer microphones than any lion could ever afford. But the real reason for this meeting today was to talk about how lions have fallen behind the curve on predicting the future. You see, a long time ago, the American people decreed you cannot use a phone while you're driving. You can't even look at a phone or tap it or swipe it. And we're going to end all traffic accidents that way. Well, it didn't really do anything. Lions still get run over all the time by drivers on their phones. And it seemed kind of ridiculous that the American people would so intimately control people. But then there was their next triumph. They decreed you can no longer get a free grocery bag. You must now pay to have a grocery bag. And the Lion Kingdom said, what the fuck? The American people are the Soviet socialists' worst nightmare. At least Saddam Hussein's worst nightmare, because they can do a lot better than Saddam Hussein. So all the grocery bags were outlawed. And the Lion Kingdom figured that was the end. Life wasn't going to get any more restrictive. But then, the American people headed to the polls again. Now, it's highly controversial why the American people required everyone to wear masks. It definitely varies. Compliance definitely varies depending on whether the American is a Republican or a Democrat. At least in California, where the sworn allies are most, and they wear their masks in the middle of an empty field with nobody around for thousands of miles, just because they're trying to show their solidarity with the party. Wait, with the people. It's not the party, it's the people. The mask law is the property of the people of the, where, of course, there might be some validity in that, since it does somewhat reduce disease spread. At the same time, in the context of all the other things you can't do in America compared to China or Thailand, you cannot overlook the aspect of the mask law that is coercive, just for the sake of being coercive. For instance, there was one final law before it gets to the coup de grace of patriotism, and that was you're not allowed to hike up mountains at night. That's right. If you hike up a mountain at night here, it gets you arrested. Criminal record, no job until you die. So if you're more athletic than the average voter, if you're more athletic than the average American, red-blooded, coercive American voter, you're probably going to randomly end up hiking a mountain without even thinking about it, and then you're just going to get arrested. And you'll be wondering why you never moved somewhere a little more free. So the traffic here is picking up because now a lot of jobs have gone remote, but this valley is an interesting story. There are no jobs in this valley. So anyone who does have a job here, a lot of people who commute far away are working from home. But if you're lucky enough to have a job in this particular valley, and this valley is, so much closer than where all the commuter jobs are, then you damn well better be getting in your car and driving to your second computer every single fucking day. Because you are privileged to work within 10 miles of employment here. And that's why this traffic is just a shit show every day from 3 to 7. This valley just gets packed with all those people who are lucky to have jobs nearby and thereby give up their remote work entitlement. Of course, the Lion Kingdom is still looking ahead to the day when lions have to commute again. Because no matter what, bosses are never going to trust employees unless they're face-to-face, unless they're commuting to a second computer and a second monitor in a different physical location to do exactly the same thing. So, what are the American people going to unleash? What new law do they have in store to coerce the masses into achieving total universal equality in all things? Well, the American people are going to ban all meat consumption. That's right. The vegans are going to finally win. Anyone eating roast beef, sandwiches, meatballs, pepperoni pizzas. What else? Lions can't really afford meat anymore. Not since the quantitative easing of 2020. But anyway, just roast beef and meatballs. For example, the American people are going to be the root of all evil. Atrocity against the elite of mankind. And getting caught with a roast beef sandwich is going to get you thrown in jail. It's going to be bad. It's going to be like climbing a mountain after dark when everybody else can't because they're too fat. And you're causing inequality by being fitter than everyone else. Let's try to get through this traffic. That guy. You never know with those right lanes. And we're going to slow down because this is a difficult road. Because in America, you're not allowed to run on a bike trail with a robotic camera system. I can tell you about that law. So apparently some people are smarter than other people, and they make robots to automate part of the camera duties and their exercise. And you know what they say about inequality. So I just ban it. You're supposed to get fat like everyone else and be equal. But anyway, so where are the Amerifucks banning meat consumption? Well, you saw it coming with the grocery bag obsession. All these guys going around clothed in grocery bags to convey something that was some kind of an issue years ago and nobody cares about it anymore. And now it's global warming. So we don't care about the fish anymore, or the plastic pollution from all these shoppers not paying for grocery bags. We care about the global warming. After all, the records today, the heat records, are at least 1 or 2 degrees colder than they would have been if an evil Republican was president. You know. So, the other way that they have reasoned the climate is overheating is because all these guys eating meat and growing animals to feed all these lions and tigers who digest meat instead of whole paycheck vegan food, refuse to support the Amazon.com empire by getting meat from Target. What is this shit? So, animals fart methane, and methane causes global warming. So that's the first reason. And the other reason is a lot of them own stock in places like Beyond Meat. Wait, the technology startups like Beyond Meat. Because agriculture is the new boom. So, if they ban meat, they're gonna send Beyond Meat to the moon. Certainly a lot faster than Mclionhead. This hill is pretty tough without a headset and talking. So that is why the Lion Kingdom expects the American people to ban meat pretty soon. Let's just get over this hill. Let's give you a view. So, well, we've got a few miles left. We got at least 6 miles left. Let's talk about a little secret. Unaware has 2 currencies. Not Bitcoin yet, but they do have 2 currencies for all intents and purposes. There's the currency that's paid in salaries, that pays for food, and there's the currency that pays for assets, houses, and stocks. They're both called doll hairs, but there's very little mixing of these 2 currency bases because to convert currency from assets to cash, you have to pay a capital gains tax and all kinds of other taxes if it's an IRA. So asset money tends to stay asset money. Cash tends to stay cash. And what happens is the government doesn't count asset money as inflation. And among cash, it's very selective to only count TV prices, Mclionheads, AdSense revenue, B movies, and beat up 20-year-old Civics as inflation, while pretty much ignoring healthcare and food, and college tuition and housing, anything you need to survive. So for 20 years, the government has pulled off this miraculous trick of not reporting any inflation, while housing and healthcare and anything you need to survive has gone up at least 500%. And that is why lions think stocks are pretty much going to 60,000 or 100,000 in the next 4 years, no matter what anybody thinks, the Fed, the stock market is trying to fight the Fed. The news is certainly making a lot of noise because the news needs to make money. And they're saying, well, 10-year treasury is stratospheric. It's like 1%. You can't handle it. It's a crisis, as the news always says. But they're really fighting the Fed. And the Fed is going to print, I don't know, 20 or 40 trillion dollars in the next couple of years. Because you notice in the headlines, the news doesn't even care anymore what the size of the bi-weekly economic stimulus packages are. They just say, well, the next one is somewhere between 2 and 50 trillion. It doesn't really matter because they can print whatever they want. So we're just going to call it 50 trillion. And that's sort of what Congress is doing too. It's just, why do you even need to place a numerical number besides any economic stimulus package when the money is just printed at will? And the trick is when the Fed issues new money, they issue it to primary dealers and the stock exchange. They don't issue it as paychecks. So primary dealers buy stock instead of buying bonds, which they would have to do if there was no quantitative easing. So it's kind of like having a government run a surplus, 50 to 100 trillion a year. Just because the Fed puts a lot more money into the stock and bond market than the government takes out nowadays. And because of the capital gains tax and the IRA distribution taxes, it stays in the stock market, it stays in housing prices, and never shows up as reported inflation. So we can easily have, 1,000 or 1,000,000% rise in the stock market with no rise in the cost of Mclionhead's AdSense revenue or any of the other worthless items that are counted as inflation. So which way are we going today? Now, what about the direct payments to individuals? Well, if you were really smooth in a bar in your 30s and nailed every single pickup line when the moment of truth happened, had your demonstration of higher value and your fake job title was lined up, and you managed to get married and stay married, well, you can actually qualify for a direct payment. So, where do you think all those people put their direct payments? They invest them right back in the stock market. No inflation. So, donks are going to be in for a big surprise when the inflation readings come in next year, and they're all showing negative.
Wait.
Either negative or zero. Of course, Mclionhead was banned from monetizing any videos a long time ago because they did not vote for the people. It's not the required political party, it's the people. If you don't vote for the people, you don't get monetization on the GooTubes. So overall, this vlogging system upgrade is a disaster, as they always are. But That's why we have these tests. A lot of radio dropouts, a lot of microcontroller dropouts. Let's look at the traffic. It's actually not so bad outside around here. But man, if we go into the city right now, it's stuck. That's why lions think if you're into commodities, if you don't watch Dave Ramsey, oil is going to head up exactly the same way it did during the quantitative easing 15 years ago. Just because there's too much money chasing too little goods. And people are pessimistic because they read fabricated inflation numbers. And they think a lot of people are going to be able to work remotely when they're not. There's going to be a lot more commuting. There's simply too many Mclionheads in the world who aren't going to get into top tier tech jobs. And we're going to have to hustle for the oil consumption to remain low. Certainly, airlines are still way down in consumption. As if you want to show solidarity with the people, you're certainly not going to be exposing yourself to an environment which you can get the virus from. So a lot of people who have been staying home needlessly are only going to stop staying home in the next year. After all the elections are over, of course. And the people have won. Now the Lion Kingdom has been very fortunate. This is probably the first time in 40 years of large-scale virus outbreaks that we lions have not contracted it. We got the norovirus during the outbreak of 2018. That was terrible. Being incapacitated for a week is absolutely horrible. And we used to get every single flu virus back when Chinese flu was a big deal 20, 30 years ago. Of course, you can't say it's the Chinese flu anymore. You just have to finesse your way around it because you know. Now, Chinese have a lot of freedoms that we don't have. But the insistence of the American people on outlawing genetics and reality kind of make the Chinese look bad. We just said, well, these viruses are because of an economic system that didn't work. And it wouldn't be politically correct, but it kind of makes the Chinese look like the enemy when the American people create all these laws requiring you to say, well, the Chinese government never did anything wrong in the 60s. Chinese government has always been true and right. And we're just gonna ban anyone who says otherwise. I don't even think the Chinese government would outlaw the stuff that we're not allowed to say about it. And you know where. Never be too hard on the commuters, because they're the ones who have to get in their car. They have to get their butt down to a physical office just to keep their jobs. So it is packed, and lions get run over by a lot of commuters. So, about those vaccination appointments. Well, lions are eligible, but at least in Calif, the vaccinations are being segregated by color of skin. So lions are not the right skin color, and they're not really eligible in the short term. And it just made the Lion Kingdom think, because getting vaccinated isn't really a big deal. If you're only part human, and lions have proven fairly immune to human-borne viruses, except for norovirus. But 40 years ago, back in lion school, they had almost thrown in the towel on segregation. They used to tell us about the Jim Crow laws and how it's the root of all evil to classify people based on skin color. And Lord knows, when I heard the term colored for the first time, I thought it was the most derogatory term. And I thought, well, the people of the South came up with the term colored just to insult people, because it was so derogatory. And here we are, 40 years later, where the government is now stipulating segregation of vaccines based on whether you're colored or not. And it's got the Lion Kingdom wondering, well, maybe we were wrong. Maybe it's like iterative development, and the wave of integration of the 70s and 80s was just race relations Mark 1, and it had a hard landing. It had a rapid unscheduled disassembly, and we're going to try again. And it looks like maybe the South was onto something, and you can't really integrate people. Segregation is kind of the human condition, and you just have to deal with it, because The government now sees segregation as a panacea. They literally, whenever they see a problem, or at least the American people, whenever they see a problem, they just throw segregation at it. Well, we'll just make sure that only colored people can have certain resources, and only white people can have other resources, and the problem's solved. Next crisis. It's almost the exact opposite of the way it used to be. It's like so many other human institutions that we thought had disappeared or were failures 40 years ago. I might say we used to think that printing money was not a solution. But nowadays, printing money is the way that everything's done. And maybe the rationales are different. But we're restoring a lot of institutions from past governments that we were once told didn't work. And that's why lions think a lot of the human condition is really evolved and biological, and humans are not as learned as they once thought they were. There are just some things you can't improve upon. So, the Lion Kingdom gets to wait in line for its vaccine at the back of a bus, so to speak. Because segregation is going to solve all our problems. Maybe if they segregate starships based on color of the stainless steel, they'll have a successful landing. Now, we all know that Oakland has a new universal basic income program, which is only being offered to colored people. Segregation is a big part of the solutions being created in Oakland. And a lot of people who might have grown up thinking they were like everyone else now have to learn to call themselves colored. Lions don't see cash when they see welfare programs. They see resources like capital. So it's not $500 yet for being colored. It's a new confuser, it's a car repair, it's a couple days of rent, but it's anything but cash. Might even be a seat closer to the front on the bus, so to speak. Segregation cures all ills in the modern American mind. This windscreen is really awful. Now, I thought Tucker Gott had a much thicker windscreen, but comparing to this one, they look the same. To get a thicker windscreen, you need a smaller microphone. A smaller microphone is going to make a really lousy sound. This is a little longer, probably, than a Louis Rossmann bike ride. Can't believe the guy thinks owning a car in New York, is going to be better for him than riding a bike. Casey Neistat thought the opposite. Looks like he's breezing by all the cars on his bike. His car is just going to be stuck there. It's going to take him 90 minutes to do what he could do on a bike in half an hour. And then the car is going to sit in his garage. He better get pay-per-mile insurance. What do Lions think about Bitcoin? It was a good deal back when it was 5,000. Not such a good deal now. I think the trick with Bitcoin, though, is it's very difficult to get in and out of. As far as the Lion Kingdom knows, the only real way to trade Bitcoin is to have a wallet and to actually convert currency into physical Bitcoins in your wallet. So you have to be your own broker, and a lot of the stuff that stockbrokers do for you, you have to do yourself. And when it comes time to get out of it, and there will be a time, well, you got to find someone who's willing to give you dollars in exchange for your Bitcoins on your own. You can't just place a limit order. And it could take a while to exchange all your Bitcoins when it's heading down. And everyone else is trying to cash them all in too. So part of the reason it did go up so high is because it's very hard to get rid of. It's kind of like owning a house. And other inflexible commodities like gold have not followed Bitcoin. So there's a difference between the price of inflexible commodities on what is pretty much a speculative asset now at today's prices. Well, there's a discrepancy between inflexible commodities and Bitcoin as far as it's been marketed as an inflexible commodity. It shows more signs of being a speculative asset now. But lions are terrible investors in general. We're going to be working until well past our death because we were a little too conservative for the last 20 years. And being employed in tiny startups, we never had access to most of the 401ks that everyone else has. And when you don't have a 401k, every single trade you make until the day you die is going to be taxed at capital gains rates or worse, regular income, regular interest rates. There's no way to go back and put money later on into a tax-deferred account. At least in Calif. Because in Calif, poverty level is above the cutoff for Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, unless you're married. If you're married, you get a little benefit there. But if you weren't smooth in a bar and you didn't put on your leisure suit and you didn't convey high wealth and prestige, you're probably not married. So you're going to be paying that interest income tax till the day you die. And every single trade is going to owe capital gains tax. Unless you're stupid or the Fed stops printing money, which they're not going to do. These headphones get mighty painful after 7 miles. Lions don't have human-shaped ears, so human headphones never fit very well. And forget about human earbuds and lion ears. Lions never listen to music on headphones when they run. This is kind of a painful learning experience. We're coming to the end of this run. As always, I hope you learned something.